Have you ever wondered how you build, truly unshakable inner strength when things get tough? Well, today, we're going to look at what was essentially a spiritual boot camp for the very first Muslims in Makkah. We're going to explore how they managed to forge a faith so resilient that it literally changed the course of history.
All right, let's dive right in. Our whole journey here really starts with this deep mystery, the human spirit. In the Quran, it's called the Ruh. And right from the get-go, the Quran makes it super clear. The complete, full knowledge of what our spirit actually is, well, that's with God alone. We've just been given a tiny little piece of the puzzle. And honestly, that's our starting point for this whole thing, understanding our connection to the divine.
So you have to picture this. The early days in Makkah were incredibly hostile. And in that environment, the main mission for these new believers, it wasn't about laying down a bunch of complex laws or building big social structures. Not yet. It was about something way more fundamental, way more personal. It was all about building an absolutely unbreakable connection to God.
And look, this wasn't just some abstract theoretical exercise. No way. We're talking about a community facing constant, brutal persecution. So under that kind of intense pressure, building a solid spiritual core, well, it wasn't just a nice to have. It was, quite literally, a matter of survival.
So, what was the actual objective? Well, it's pretty interesting when you break it down. It was kind of twofold. First, on a personal level, it was about purifying your own soul and building this incredible inner strength. But second, on a community level, it was about getting everyone ready for the huge responsibilities and duties that were just around the corner. They were training for a marathon, not a sprint.
Okay, so how did they actually forge this connection? Well, it all circles back to where we started, to understanding the nature of the soul itself, that divine spark.
You see, the Quran explains that after God fashioned the human form, from clay, he then breathed into him from his spirit. And that one act, that breath, is what transformed a physical shape into a living, conscious being. It created this direct, built-in link between us and our Creator. And with that spirit, we got these incredible tools. Think about it, your ability to hear, your ability to see, and what the Quran calls the heart, which is really our capacity for feeling and for understanding. These weren't just given to us to, navigate the physical world. They were meant to be divine instruments, tools for us to actually recognize God's signs all around us and to be thankful for them.
All right, so you have this understanding of the soul and the tools you've been given. What's next? Well, the very first method they were taught for spiritual purification was something so simple, but at the same time, just incredibly profound, and that was reflection.
I mean, the challenge was pretty obvious, right? How do you appreciate and connect with a creator that you can't see? And the answer was, you use those very tools God gave you, your sight, your hearing, your heart, to look at the signs he's placed everywhere, in this magnificent, vast tapestry of the universe.
So, looking at creation and contemplating it, that was step one. But it wasn't just about seeing God's power. The next step was to really let it sink in, the sheer scope of his knowledge, his complete, constant, moment-by-moment awareness of everything. And that realization, man, it has a profound effect on the heart.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The idea that nothing, and I mean nothing, not even a single leaf falling from a tree in some remote forest, escapes God's knowledge. That concept is meant to just wash away doubt from your soul. It creates this powerful sense of divine presence and, a gentle sense of accountability in everything you do.
So, reflection was great for connecting the mind and the heart, but they needed something more, something to actively fuel the spirit for the incredibly difficult days they were facing. And that fuel was prayer.
Yeah, the early verses actually taught that getting up in the quiet of the night to pray, that was the real spiritual training. It was what prepared them for what the Quran calls the weighty word, the heavy responsibility of the message, and just the difficult work of the day ahead. It was their main source of strength, like their nightly recharge.
And you can see just how important this was in the history. I mean, the early Muslims would literally risk their lives, meeting in secret at the house of one of the companions, a man named Al-Arqam. They did this just so they could pray together, safely away from the persecution of the Quraysh. So you see, this wasn't some casual ritual. For them, it was an absolute lifeline. So what exactly did prayer accomplish for them? Well, it was this really powerful, multi-layered tool. For one, it was a clear sign of their submission to God. It was also this deeply personal, private line of communication they had with him. And finally, it acted like a spiritual shield, strengthening their will to avoid doing things that were wrong or harmful. And the physical high point of this communication, it's the prostration. Think about the symbolism here. You're placing your forehead, the highest part of your body, down on the ground. That act is described as the moment you are closest to God. It's the ultimate act of humility, of surrender.
Okay, so we have reflection and formal prayer, but there was a final piece to this spiritual boot camp, and that was the practice of constant remembrance. The whole point was to make sure that the connection they built during prayer didn't just fade away, but was kept alive all day long.
And at the very heart of this remembrance was the Quran itself. Reciting it wasn't just about getting information. It was seen as a direct healing, a mercy for all the spiritual issues that can affect the heart, things like doubt, fear, or despair.
And to weave this remembrance into the fabric of everyday life, the Prophet taught them specific short prayers or supplications for pretty much everything. When you wake up, when you go to sleep, before you eat, when you leave your house. Every single one of these moments became a chance to consciously reconnect with God. It was a way to keep the heart constantly nourished and protected.
So after all this intense spiritual training, what's the ultimate outcome? The Quran paints this beautiful picture of a tangible light in the hereafter, a light that's literally running out in front of them, guiding them. It's a direct result of physical manifestation of the faith they worked so hard to build in their hearts, especially during those incredibly dark times.
So here's the main takeaway. This whole Makkan boot camp, with its focus on reflection, prayer, and constant remembrance, it wasn't just about getting by. It wasn't just about survival. It was a clear, practical roadmap to achieving this state of deep inner peace, of tranquility, a state where the heart can finally find true rest.
And that really leaves us with a powerful question for our own lives, doesn't it? I mean, in our world, which is just full of constant notifications and distractions, what can we take away from these core principles? What practices could serve as our nightly fuel to help us handle the challenges we face every day? It's definitely something to think about.